Welcome to my channel, fellow Rotorheads. This is Captain Helisim coming to you from Iceland. More specifically, Vestmannaeyjar Island, on our way to Thridrangar Lighthouse. I believe that is how that is pronounced. I'm sure I'm wrong about that. Thridrangar Lighthouse to you and me. A wonderful creation by Alro Creation at flightsim.to, link in the description below. This is by far my favorite environment. The cold, unforgiving climate and terrain of this landscape is absolutely fantastic and provides a challenge unlike any other. Now, as I head out there for the first time with the Captain Helisim collective attached to my chair, it's giving me pause to think about what it is about choppers that drive us. The thing is, to attach a collective to your chair is kind of a commitment. You don't need it for normal fixed-wing aircraft. It's actually an impediment. Getting in and out of the chair now is going to be a little bit of a pain. But it's attached, and it's because I'm committed to helicopters. Now, how did it get this way? When I first started using Flight Sim 2020, I was enjoying all of their different fixed-wing airplanes. I was even taking some of their prescribed bush trips, and these were long-term, multi-hour trips. I learned to use the autopilots on some of these planes because they turned out to be kind of tiring to go on these long trips. And this is one of the things that make me wonder whether Flight Sim might actually be better than really flying. I find that long-term trips kind of make me tired. Sometimes, as I'm getting into an actual commercial airliner, I look at the cockpit and the pilots within, and I fully admire their skill and knowledge and experience and the fun that they have in managing and flying the airplane. But it also crosses my mind that the experience must be something like a glorified bus driver, in the sense that you have a long distance trip and taking off is fun, and looking around once you're in the air is fun, and landing is fun. But for the most part, you've got a long trip where you're kind of just managing the process. You're calling in, you're being directed where to fly and where to go, and following procedures and making sure that everything is operational. That's not so much flying as in managing the process. For me in Flight Sim, the most exciting part was landing. And this is this thing where you're coming in and you need to put it down gently, exactly where it needs to be, center, on the numbers. And that certainly is a challenge and it's fun, but that's kind of the whole thing. That's the moment. That's the proof of ability, is to put it where you want it when you're landing. Otherwise, you're just flying around, and most people can keep an airplane in the air in a flight simulator, but landing it is where the talent is. In a helicopter, you're hands-on the entire time. You can never let your hands go. There's really generally no autopilot. You're the guy, and you got to keep it going, and you have to manage the entire thing in terms of flight, from startup, takeoff, flying, and touchdown. It's the whole thing is on you. And that's what I like about helicopters, is that you are actively flying the aircraft. It's not something where you generally let the autopilot do most of the work. Now, I did see a video where an actual helicopter pilot said, yes, the autopilot actually does do most of the work, because it's safer, evidently. So they take off and they set the autopilot and they go to where they're going to go, and then the gentleman actually lands it or hovers or does whatever rescue operation he needs to do. And that is an actual work vehicle. This is something that you do in a work environment where it needs to be safe and it needs to be professional and repeatable and precision. And I understand that. But that's a different environment than flying an MD-500 if you're doing line work. like on an electrical line inspection, or coming to fix a lighthouse, or something like that. These are hands-on, no autopilot type jobs. And that's what I love, is that you're in there in the minutia of actually flying the vehicle. In-flight sim, nevertheless, but still, you're actively involved in it. It's not handoff to autopilot, because I find that to be kind of boring. Now, as you watch me come in here, I had to do this 3 times, as I'm getting acquainted with my chair-mounted collective as opposed to the joystick-mounted paddle. I find I have very little muscle memory, or 0 actually, in order to be able to fluidly do what I want to do. And furthermore, what's funny is, as per one of my commenters, Sean Coyne, compared flying a helicopter to balancing on a bowling ball. This particular spot is like balancing on a greased bowling ball. And that is because as you're coming in a stabilized mode, that is with a controlled descent rate and flight path, you find that as you get to the pad, there's a rounded bubble of air because of the ground effect pushing up from the pad. And that makes it, at least in the simulator, exceedingly difficult to put it down center and in a controlled fashion. So I ended up having to do this 3 times. But that is what adds to the challenge of being an expert helicopter pilot, to be able to put it down on that tiny pad at the top of this foreboding rock in the middle of nothing. And that's why I love this location so much. Another aspect of helicopters is that it's really a full body exercise. The chopper pilot is basically the drummer of pilots. I remember I was sitting alongside a chopper pilot, and she was recounting a story about her early career where she was flying a twin-engine chopper, and the 2 engines were mismatched. And I don't remember if they were different manufacturers or different styles or different eras of the same engine, but she had to manage their power output with 2 thumb switches on her control. So she had 4 limbs and a thumb actively working to keep everything balanced and running. So finally, what else can I say about choppers? It's the fact that they're just cool. Yeah, lots of airplanes are cool. The Blackbird is incredibly cool. Many types of aircraft, the Concorde, the P-51, I'm talking about all military aircraft here, but many aircraft are very cool. But choppers, there's just something mystical about them. People don't look up at airplanes as they go flying by, but when a chopper goes by, everybody stands and stares at it. It's just a beautiful, freaky machine that everybody loves. And I'm going to blame my upbringing in the 70s and 80s, when choppers were kind of the thing that was cool in visual media. Everybody who grew up in those days remembers these 2 guys. On the show Magnum P.I., Tom Selleck on the right played Magnum, who drove around in a Ferrari on Hawaii, and T.C. on the left, who flew an MD 500. It was very cool. There were other shows like Dirty Mary, Crazy Larry that had incredible helicopter antics, and then a TV movie called Deadly Encounter that you can find on YouTube, or at least clips of it, where the helicopter stunts were off the chain, so to speak. These were things that really embedded the concept of helicopters into a formative mind. And so I think, for a number of reasons, those of us who choose to rotor have a feeling that only helicopters can give us. And that is something that feels somewhat nostalgic, somewhat exciting, somewhat unique, and it's just its own measure of cool that we aspire to in the real world and indulge in the fantasy simulation world. As far as the do-it-yourself collective, I'm still arranging all the little bits and pieces of video I took while in the process of creating it, and as soon as I can arrange that into something sensible that you guys can follow, I will post it. And you guys can go ahead and build this thing for yourself if you like. And I do recommend it because from what I can tell so far, it does provide a much smoother interaction, a much more intuitive interaction. And if you ever get behind the controls of a real helicopter, it will actually make more sense to you than trying to remap the joystick paddle to this lever contraption on the side of your seat. And finally, to the person who said my intro and outro music sounded a little boomerish, yeah, but consider the source inspiration.